Hey folks, Chris here in central Pennsylvania once again. Even on a slow news day, people generate news. Now, I'm in the middle of nowhere here on a back country road, not too far from Yellow Breeches Creek, a world-renowned bass and fly fishing location. A road that you wouldn't expect much traffic, but mark my words, somebody will probably come down this road while I'm filming. We'll see. But even on slow news days, stories come that make you shake your head and have you refute the nonsense. And this one in the South African. The title of this one is No Food, Jobs or Phones, Afrikaner refugee, in quotations, family stranded in the U.S. Well, okay, the question whether stranded is in quotes because we don't know if that's true. But the refugee thing, once again, South African media, this is the South African, and they're putting it in quotes. Why? These people are legal refugees. You may not like that, but that's U.S. law. And that's an eternal sovereign issue for us. South Africans are fond, especially politicians in the media, of saying that we're a sovereign nation. You are. You can do what you like within the norms of international relations. And so can we. We are a sovereign nation. This is our law, and these people have been granted refugee status because they're suffering from unjust racial discrimination as per the conclusion of U.S. government officials. Case closed. Take the quotations off refugee. They are refugees. It's as simple as that. So they start the story off with a subtitle, American Dream, with a question mark. An Afrikaner refugee, once again quotes, family has been left without assistance, including food, after arriving in the United States. Now, I've researched this story and I've talked to people involved who know what's going on here, and this story is a lot more complicated than this story in the South African would lead you to believe. And there's a number of problems with the story, which I'm going to point out, okay? Also, I'm going to ask the question is, what passes for journalism in South Africa? This story appears to be simply cutting and pasting quotes and statements from other stories and from a video, not actually doing any analysis or actually reporting any news. So an Afrikaner refugee family reportedly been stranded in the U.S. and is appealing for help on Facebook. Well, that's a few days old now. They've gotten help, and not necessarily from Facebook, but from other Afrikaners who helped them out and other refugees. The startling revelation was made by a South African expat on TikTok. Your source is a TikTok video for someone with 300 or 400 followers on TikTok. Not that they can't produce good content, but that leads one to question the story from the very beginning, if that's your source. And that TikToker has since removed the video and published a new video in which they say that the information they had was third-hand. So they were relaying third-hand information, which you're now reporting as news on the South African, which would make it fourth-hand information. No primary sources, fourth-hand social media information. That's about as useful as flushing a toilet. Doesn't mean it can't be true, but you should get a source that confirms your information. And on her TikTok account, the South African expat who posted this video is mentioned here. I'm not going to go into who that is. But the person said the refugees, they were understanding that they would be arriving here in the U.S. for complete assistance. People thought they would be arriving at a house, a job, medical insurance, and other things. It isn't that way at all. Well, that statement's true. It isn't that way at all. And where did you come to the conclusion that they thought that? Did they tell you that? And who told them that? No one's ever told anyone that, to my knowledge. I've been very clear since February 7th about this program, what assistance is available, including the financial. And I was the first person to do that. And go ahead, dispute that. But the digits are there. The receipts are there. The video is posted, the 10th of February, something like that, maybe the 11th of February, that talks about financial assistance under the immigration nationality law for people coming over here. So who told them they were getting all these things? No one gives you jobs. This isn't South Africa. This isn't a patronage machine. Maybe Chicago, but the country is not a patronage machine. So this person who posts on TikTok is correct. It doesn't work that way. But where did you derive that from? Did they tell you that? You don't say. You just imply that that's what they said. And this person criticized the refugees. And once again, in quotations for refugees. Why? Here are these people, regardless of what they were promised, just came here expecting everything. Really? Well, if that's the case, then they really have unrealistic expectations because they were never told that. They were never told that. But she added here that they couldn't get a job. Said because of the political situation, they were really struggling to get jobs. Well, first off, they've been here less than a month. That's struggling to get a job? I seriously doubt that. I mean, I bet you a lot of these people came over, have been without jobs for 5, 10, 15 years or longer because of racism in South Africa and people being excluded from the job market because they're white or being made redundant or colored or Indian. So they can't get a job because of the political situation. What political situation are we talking about here? What political situation? The state in which this occurs, these people were doxxed, so I'm not telling any secret here. They've already been revealed, but I won't mention the state. But the state in which they now reside has an unemployment rate of, South Africa, it's over 40%, although the government claims it's 30+%. But the unemployment rate where they live is 2.7%. That's full employment, essentially. What political situation is keeping them from getting a job? They have legal status to get a job. They're not illegal immigrants, so they don't have to worry about ICE rounding them up and chasing them out. They're white. They're living in a state that's 90+% white. That'll help you narrow down where they're at in case you're nosy. Yeah. So what political situation is keeping them from getting a job? Is this just a gratuitous statement, or was it a claim by them? But see, this isn't news. This is just hearsay. Absolute hearsay. This isn't journalism. I mean, seriously, folks, this is what passes for journalism in South Africa. How do people even get qualified to be journalists in South Africa? Last month, this story says the director of the Department of International Relations, DIRCO, that's the foreign ministry, said that refugees, once again quotes, in the U.S. would not have access to any diplomatic assistance whilst abroad. Well, that's nonsense. That's factually untrue. Is the South African government denying South African citizens access to consular services in the United States? This is an issue. This is an issue. That's not legitimate. That's not allowed. You can't spitefully deny services to your citizens because they sought refuge abroad because of either conflict or governance issues in your country. That makes you a pariah nation. So if DIRCO actually said that, they're factually wrong. And the South African government better damn well provide consular services to their citizens residing in this country as refugees, or they will be responsible for what comes after that. Now, here they say the persecuted, with quotation marks again, the persecuted South Africans would instead be assisted by the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, which was signed as an executive order by President Trump. That's factually incorrect. What kind of research is involved here? That's factually incorrect. The Afrikaner Act does not exist. There's no such thing. There is a bill in the House of Representatives introduced by Texas Representative Troy Nehls, which seeks to let white people come over to the United States under a specifically designated, lawfully assigned program called the Afrikaner Act, but there's no act. President Trump signed an executive order exercising his authority under existing federal law, the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act of 1980, not the Afrikaner Act. That's nonsense, utter nonsense. It's U.S. law, not an executive order. And they are persecuted. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been approved for refugee status. Simple as that. As part of the Afrikaner Act, the group was also given priority to refugee status. Well, that's under immigration law, not under an Afrikaner Act, which doesn't exist as law. And it says that the Afrikaner Act provides them with startup assistance like money, jobs, and even a house. That's factually untrue once again. There's no such thing as the Afrikaner Act. Those resources provided under existing law, under programs funded by the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of State, in which they fund non-government organizations in 2024 to the tune of $2.7 billion, over 300 NGOs in the network, which used to include the racist Episcopal Church, which no longer participates because they're racist against white people, and they're factually uninformed because they're a bunch of bigots. And so they're no longer participating in the program, but there's almost 300 other NGOs involved. It isn't the Afrikaner Act. That it doesn't exist, okay? And then down here, they wrap up saying DIRCO added refugees would be welcomed back as citizens. However, they would have to revoke their status in order for this to happen. No, you can't force people to revoke their refugee status. That's illegitimate. That goes contrary to international norms. That makes you a pariah state. South African citizens remain South African citizens until and unless they become a citizen of another nation. It's as simple as that. You can't make them stateless. If DIRCO said that, that's a fraudulent statement, and it should be exposed. And finally, in all caps at the bottom of this article, which appears to be just cut and paste from news reports and comments from that video on TikTok, do you think Afrikaner refugees, in quotes, were unrealistic about expecting a better life in the U.S.? No, I don't. I'm in touch with several of the 59ers, the first cohort that came over, and actually someone in the second cohort. I don't know anyone that's unhappy about coming over here. And unrealistic? No. Let's see. Came to this country and in 2 weeks had a social security number, had job interviews, bought a brand new car, essentially. My car's 10 years old. This person's car is 2 years old. I call that brand new. Bought a new car, has a bank account, got a job offer, making more money than I made in 25 years serving my nation in uniform. Annual salary, starting this weekend. Very happy. Cupboard full of food, courtesy of the Refugee Assistance Resettlement Agent. I can talk to other people around the country having similar experiences. Very happy that they're here. So do I think that they had unrealistic expectations of better life? No. They're not awake at night, waking up every 15 minutes, waiting to be raped, murdered, and having their throats slit, or being treated like crap walking through the store because they're white, or denied service by government employees because they're white, or denied medical care and watching their parents die by being denied medical care in a government hospital because they're white, or because they're colored, or because they're Indian. No, I think that they're perfectly happy and content by and large. Is it a cakewalk? Is it a gift? No. But this is the land of the free. You have freedom. Look at me out here in the middle of nowhere recording this video. Perfectly safe. I'm not worried about someone creeping out of the woods to murder me or rape me or drag me off there, rob me and steal my car. Yeah, I don't think that they are regretting their decisions. So this story is meant to give people the impression that it's not good to come to America. Again, I've never encouraged anyone to come here, but I'm also not discouraging. It's not my place. My place is to tell you the truth and rubbish the lies. Now, son of a gun, we've been talking for almost 11 minutes and nobody came down this road. That must be the first time I've ever recorded here that didn't happen. This is how it's supposed to be. Quiet. Nobody on this back road. So, South Africa, what do you say? Do you think the refugees made a mistake? Or do you think this sensationalist yellow journalism is the problem? I think that's the problem. Cheers.